Should we kick up those lights?
I think I'm waiting to see. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I think it shows us really dark on there, but we're actually not.
Okay.
It would be really cool if this would play.
Well, y'all, we are having some emotional whiplash because we have been focusing on our true joy, which is the Claymation Mental Health Podcast currently in the works.
Yep, the podcast that some are calling the world's first mental health claymation podcast. Yes, we should do those live.
And it's been so fun and whimsical. And here we are just jumping back into the most... It would be comical and absurd if it weren't so real and so egregious. And here we are to discuss. I feel like we're, of course, talking about Tim Ballard today. Hi, I'm Tanner.
I'm Sam.
If you're on the live stream of us, it's probably because you've met us before.
Either way, sorry.
This story is just endlessly fascinating to me. It's like a microcosm of everything. It's the perfect, when I say that with the dark cynicism,
right.
The perfect story, because it shows exactly how fraudulent systems self-perpetuate and how they all play off of each other, and how people brought up in them are totally conditioned to be blind to this sort of thing, to support it.
Doesn't it blow your mind how much Mormon fraud stuff has been coming up lately? Like, it was always like a slow drip, but just with like the Lori Vallow stuff and the Ruby Frankie Jody Hood, like these are becoming international stories, and like it hasn't been like this really before. Like, yeah, it's illustrated. It's crazy.
The stuff we've seen thus far has been like, under the banner of heaven, where it's kind of like in recent Mormon history, but still history, like 80s or Murder Among the Mormon, also like Mark Hoffman. Mm-hmm. That's like, it's been a minute, so but this is like happening
hit at
now.
People's hearts quite as much though. It's like stuff seems to have got extra dark lately.
Right, because they're like, that's flecks of history. Leave it in the past. Mm-hmm. And it's like, actually, this stuff is still playing out now. The Joseph Smith Grifter Handbook is still being used by these same exact blue-eyed, blonde-haired fraudsters.
Okay, this
no offense, Sam.
None taken, Tanner. The Tim Ballard situation is kind of unique because normally Mormons specifically will rush to like defend the church as having nothing to do with these stories, really. Mm-hmm. But Tim has become a prophet in Mormonism.
Yes.
Because of how powerfully he was able to tap into people's emotions by making a fake movie. I mean, the movie was real, and I heard great production quality.
Well, and that's his whole thing this whole time has been movies, right? Like he didn't, I mean, this whole thing was a ruse, right? We know this at this point, like these things, it's like, oh, he's made some mistakes while doing great work stopping trafficking. This was never about trafficking. This was always about Tim's ego, always about getting famous, always about leveraging that fame and influence for devious purposes, which we'll talk about.
Regardless of how conscious he necessarily was, like, it's entirely possible that he himself believed that there was also the purpose of rescuing children, despite the fact that experts were saying this is not good, Yeah. Despite all of that, like
he's been raised in a culture that's totally normalized this type of attitude, given people the cognitive playbook for how to operate. It's like it's all fraught from the beginning, and of course, adults need to take responsibility and accountability for their own actions. And Tim, at every stage, is totally refusing to take any amount of accountability. So you're like, okay, that you're just a huckster at this point. You're a fraudster, like.
Yeah, for me, it was when he called the world's leading expert on international trafficking law a bitch. That was what did it for me.
Well, she didn't even know about the couple's ruse. Maybe if she had had the journalistic integrity to do a little bit of investigation, maybe, I don't know, channeled the prophet Nephi, he could have checked it out for her.
That's what she didn't have is a channel to the prophet Nephi.
If only Tim wasn't lying to investors about that.
That's why women shouldn't be in the workplace.
That's exactly why. They should be spearheading wild goose chase anti-trafficking missions. Well, oh my God. We joke to keep from
sorry, I just remembered what we're doing in this stream.
Oh God. So the famed mission, the Gardaí rescue mission, which OUR and Tim Ballard have leveraged to raise God knows how many millions of dollars and how many personal private perks for Tim Ballard.
It's just a marketing
invoking
story,
the name of Gardaí, this child in Haiti, I believe, who, like, weeks after his family disappeared in like the tsunami, father now has a son that just disappears. Gardy. Tim Ballard hears about it. It's like, we're going to go down there rescue, because psychic Janet Russin knows how to find him.
Wait,
and
did they even know he was sold into sex trafficking?
No, just disappeared. And Janet Russin is like, I know what happened to him. He was sold for sex trafficking. We can find him. Oh my
God, that's actually even worse than I knew.
And they've got the statements about what they've said, like about her being like,
I thought they had some reason to think that he was sold into trafficking. I knew it was all like kind of bullshit from there, but I thought they at least had some reason to think that.
No, their intelligence that they received was from
Janet the psychic.
From Prophet Nephi, though, on ketamine, so K never lies.
You've always said that.
In the words of Tracy Morgan, am I in Horseville? Because I'm surrounded by naysayers. Okay, so Janet Russin, looking at a photograph of Gardy, the disappeared child, is saying, when this photograph is taken, I feel that we'll find your son at the camp. And he says that. She begins to cry. I'm okay. And then inaudible, yeah, the spirit, yeah. And then Tim says to the person, your mom is loud. Janet, your mom is loud. Your mom is clear. Tim, you should hear the rest. Hear the rest of the reading from your mom and your sister. Janet, yeah, they're always there. They're literally telling, this is like unconscionable levels of fraud. And it, maybe Janet just believes her own bullshit, and she's like, has a, atypical neuro state, and just hasn't figured out that doesn't mean that she's seeing reality. She's just seeing stuff.
Yeah.
But then using that to be like, give someone false details about their family, while using that story to again raise millions of dollars. And it gets worse. They're still like running like 5-star golf tournaments under like the Gardy Rescue, and legally shutting down other attempts of people to find Gardy. They've made it impossible for other groups to go to Haiti to look for Gardy. They haven't, and they're not even actively pursuing anymore. They're just like, but still continuing to benefit while like manipulating the most vulnerable and hurt people and grifting the wider community of millions of dollars for that. Like truly sickening stuff. And we haven't even got to the witness statements from the women he groomed yet, which have just dropped. I mean, this story started about us wanting to talk about Glenn Beck. And even just in the time of Glenn Beck's statement, there's just like, there's never ending pipeline of shit.
It's like, it's definitely, it's not some guy that made a few mistakes. It's like this whole unraveling thing. How did he meet that family, by the way, with the...
I'm not sure exactly on the details. I think it was like someone got in contact, was like, hey, I know someone who might be able to help you.
Okay.
And Tim saw an opportunity.
Because, that's just, not that we already didn't know that he would just exploit Black and brown people in foreign countries, but like, it's just that. It's just another level of that, right?
Right. So.
And giving them false hope. Oh, God.
Yeah.
All of it.
And not totally not bringing this up to investors that like our intelligence, and including the like design of the company, OUR, was like through the assistance of Janet Russin the psychic. And worse, Janet the psychic's influence in Tim's grooming scheme, which just seems straight out of the Joseph Smith handbook, like the Joseph Smith playbook, which is like, grift your way into running for president of the United States. It's grim. So, like I said, we started off talking about how Glenn Beck recently, who is, of course, a right-wing commentator, was on Fox News for a long time, got fired, started The Blaze, his own independent thing. He's been partnered with OUR for a long time. And he recently came out and was like, I was totally, completely duped. And on the one hand, it's like, yeah, sure, you were. And two, you totally knew. Glenn Beck's organization fired Tim like the opening weekend of Sound of Freedom after they did their own investigations and talked to all these women. And then he's been like, oh, the church shouldn't speak out about this. This is, they've overstepped their...
Do you know what I think that was, though? I think Glenn Beck probably heard about that and was willing, this is complete speculation, but like was willing to put up with, he might have recognized that some things had crossed a sort of a HR line. So it kind of needed to happen. But he ultimately thought like, Tim's a good guy. Who cares if he did a little bit of sexual harassment that like HR's fault?
Or maybe she was just misunderstood. Like he was doing the right thing and they took it the wrong way.
But like, I just, even about his own, like, because he's probably hearing, well, he probably was pretty directly involved with Tim, though, wasn't he?
Oh, totally. And he's been like making so much money.
But I do believe that he didn't know. He didn't know this. I think he knew that Tim probably was a measure of this, and he was willing to be okay with that, which is kind of the chilling part. Yeah. It's also scary listening to Glenn talk about this and how blindsided he was. Am I moving ahead too much?
No. This is perfect.
Just like the allowances given to men in the patriarchy is just like mind blowing. Like as Glenn Beck's talking about this, he's telling his listeners that like his team conducted like an unbiased investigation where Glenn wasn't even involved. Glenn didn't want this to be true. He just wanted to find out the truth. And like, as he's describing at every step of the way, he's so shocked. And even as he's saying like the findings of this report that Tim is so clearly guilty and this is really horrific stuff, he's like, I still could be wrong. I consider Tim a friend. I think he's gone astray. Do you know what I mean? If a woman under the patriarchy is found being a lying whore, or if she is just a lying whore from that point on, no one is allowed to be like, she just went astray, but she was doing good stuff.
Let alone being found the global expert on human trafficking who's just a bitch for criticizing us at all. Like, there have been people being like, red flag, red flag. Elizabeth fucking Smart, the prototypical Mormon trafficking victim turned activist, like who would have more personally invested and at stake and be like conscious of things that the rest of us would be like totally impervious to than Elizabeth Smart. She walked away from like a very brief union with them saying, these people are scammers. Like these are bad people. And everyone was just like,
she's probably wrong. She's a woman. She's gone through a lot.
We couldn't have seen this coming. Meg Conley, like, what year was that? 2020. Wrote about this, and it was like
the like layers,
women.
The layers of sexism to all of this, genuinely just mind blowing. Like, I don't know where I was going with that. You talk for a bit.
Okay, well, apparently Glenn Beck is so shocked, even though he knew about this months ago. And I think the thing that has been changing everyone's mind is actually hearing the accounts from the women he groomed.
The thing I was going to say, kind of related to that, is like, I do believe that Glenn Beck didn't know the full extent.
Sure.
But I think Glenn Beck does not realize that his brain clearly like lacked the ability to question his, like, he's not as smart as he thinks, to be blunt. Like, he's not able to, he's kind of unconsciously choosing not to know more because the information is available to him. I'm sure he has but he's not a man who had like any incentive to like question a man like Tim Ballard. Because in the same article where he's talking about this, he talks about how the Brett Kavanaugh things were false. And like, he even openly says when talking about all of this, like, normally this stuff is like not true, but this time I cared because it affected me. Like, he just openly said that in his podcast.
Because now people are blaming me for totally enabling this coercive predatory grifter. Like, and now I'm having to bear personal responsibility. I was just duped like the rest of you.
I wish, because it's so funny that Glenn Beck like considers himself like a free thinker who's like bringing the hard-hitting truth that people can't accept to the people, but like is so unconscious of how patriarchy is influencing his ability to see reality.
Yes.
Like the ideology is more under patriarchy, that because that's just his baseline reality. The only way to frame like the Russell Brands, the Brett Kavanaugh, and for some reason this one's different, but Tim Ballard, is to just think women are lying. Otherwise there's too much reckoning. The whole system falls apart. So like patriarchy makes you stupid.
Yes.
But all these like bros think it makes them so smart. God, sorry.
Nope.
It's an obvious point, but it's just mind blowing that Glenn Beck is like so famous for being like a thinker.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, he can't even, just no.
It's the water he swims in, and he's never had to like grapple with anything but that.
I would just think that anyone might be guilty of anything, honestly. There's no one I can really hold in high enough esteem to where I'm like, yeah, maybe humans are fucking crazy. Well, like, you got to be open to it.
Yeah, and there's so much telling, like, purity culture is always suspect. Yeah. Because it's all about shoving normal human complexity into the dark recesses of the being.
That's what the whole story is about at every level, from even the way people are reacting to it. Yeah. From like the conception of the events happening to that.
And so much of it is like with this stuff about all this about we're about to go into about them, basically using this grift, being like, oh, we have to save children, but we're going to raise millions of dollars that we're actually spending the majority of doing drugs and drinking for practice at local strip clubs.
Like, do you think it's the majority?
I don't know about the majority. They're also doing five-star hotels in foreign countries and taking the private planes there and the nice
making $600,000 a year would be nice. $600,000 a year in Utah.
Oh, and that's just what he was making from the non-profit.
Base salary,
and so much of that money was being funneled into for-profit stuff that he is.
So reaping, we don't even.
Which
is such a Utah story.
Literally, this is like the Mormon story, and I think that's why a lot of us in the Mormon space are really interested in this, because again, it's like this all-encompassing, almost like microcosm of like, here's all the problems of Mormonism condensed into one like present day application that so closely mirrors the original story that it like rattles you, and it's why so many Mormons are refusing to grapple with it, and not just Mormons,
weirdly,
like
also
people who just want to be like to even unravel Tim as a predator, as a fraud, would force me to reckon with the ways that other people are using the same mechanisms to deceive, coerce, and manipulate me.
But it was easy when it was Jody Hildebrand.
Yeah.
She's a woman.
Yeah.
So easy.
Has she been officially
excommunicate? Oh, I have no idea, actually.
Who's
to say?
Wild. Hulu already is on top of a documentary about that. I can't believe it.
But don't you think it's crazy that the evangelicals are also siding with Mormons on this one, even though it's like he's so clearly a Mormon phenomenon, but like they connected with the sound of freedom. It gave them an emotionally compelling experience, and also evangelical Christianity. It's all like a function of the right-wing political machine, ultimately. Yes. It's just the ways that they use evangelicals and Mormons. Oh God. And then we're in such a moment right now with Mormonism and people like their political leanings becoming more powerful in their lives than their religions, which we haven't really seen before. Mormonism has typically been so cult-like that that's always going to come first. And there's been like different types of leaders, but
oh yeah,
it's chilling.
Very.
You know how ex-Mormons are always like, there's not a bad reason to leave the church. I said to Tana the other day, I think this is proving that there are bad reasons to leave the church. I'd way rather someone be aligning with the LDS Church's general vibe than Tim Ballard.
I know.
Come on,
this has given me respect. May not be the right word, but like a level of like
respect.
Respect light.
Yeah.
For the like liberal and relatively liberal, relatively, and in some ways conservative ways of dealing with stuff.
I mean, pro-vax in the pandemic.
At the very least.
A win is a win. Yeah. So are we going to go through the bullying?
We're going to go through. So Glenn, it's just got to the point where like Glenn Beck to end the LDS Church, which has been propping up Tim Ballard, which did sanction his excursions and the way he's gone about doing this. And again, he hasn't gone about doing it any of the right way. All like informed and experienced anti-trafficking experts out there took one look at this and were like, this is like ripe with opportunities for people to abuse what's going on here. And as we're watching it play out, that's exactly how it happened. And so everyone who's like tapped into what's going on here could have told us all a long time ago. We're all learning together, right? We're not like experts. We're just learning as we go. But there have been people talking out about this. And now that these women have come forward and they've issued an official lawsuit, they're being officially representative, and they've made a list of like over 100 items, and the items are
if you were
horrifying.
lying, there's no, it's such a clear picture has been painted, and it's so in line with an archetype of fraudster we already know of. That's another reason why I think a lot of Mormons and, to be honest, evangelicals struggle to see it, is because they haven't even deconstructed like the classic con man, grifter, prophet, whatever.
Yeah, it's like they're still, you talk to them about section 132, DNC 132, the scripture that Joseph Smith gave to justify polygamy, and the language that's used in that is like, oh yes, and the first wife shall consent, but if she doth not consent, she shall be destroyed. That's like robbing someone at gunpoint and being like, oh, well, you are voluntarily consenting to give me your money. Thank you very much.
That is why Satan had to go and he was bad news. It's because he wasn't offering that kind of agency.
Was not, yeah. And so like this system of coercion is just like baked into the infrastructure of Mormonism. They're conditioned to not see the ways that the system is inherently coercive and ripened them for coercive people to take advantage of that, which is again why Utah is the affinity fraud capital of the United States. Maybe the world. I don't know.
And to be honest, Tim Ballard represents like an extreme of a phenomenon that has like many layers to it. Like even just sort of the average BYU, I don't want to shade BYU, but just like the average like business bro in Utah County is very like exploitative business minded. Like definitely but even things that aren't per se overt grifts, it's very much the vibe of like exploit people in other countries for low wages if you need to. Like anything is justified in the service of getting wealth. Like that is the general vibe around Utah business. Even at lower levels that maybe technically aren't illegal or anything, but they're just like, from my perspective, like not really ethical and just kind of shitty, and they're just about the money. Like they serve no purpose that is like of value to the world. They're like not conscious businesses, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so it's like the Tim Ballard archetype, even just like his presentation is like, for a lot of people, they're seeing their like brothers and husbands and dads in him, in his literal presentation as a human being. Whereas like, in, I guess, the community we're in, I don't really meet like a Tim Ballard type that often, but I remember being in Mormonism and that was like a very common archetype of person. Yeah. So that's, thinking about like why people have such a hard time believing that a member of their in-group is guilty when attacks are coming from their out-group. Although this is crazy because it's also coming from the in-group, the LDS Church. So like, wow, the power that this man has. Yeah. And for what?
And he has, again, just been propped up by the church at every turn, has had the sanction of the church, may believe that in some ways he's like doing something good for the world and is therefore justified and is avoiding committing sin. But what he's really is doing is relegating his shadow side to the unconscious, and it's coming out in coercive ways against people who he's put into very difficult circumstances. We'll take a quick break and say thank you so much, JC, for the super chat.
Thank you.
What a brazen scheme. Tax-free millions as an RW Mormon spent on first-class travel with bros, strip clubs, booze, abusing women.
Absolutely no need for them to fly first class. Absolutely no need. Economy's fine, okay? If you're saving children, you can slum it in economy.
Yeah.
Or economy premium if you're going to be a princess.
You don't want the traffickers to know, right? This whole thing is crazy. It's like, oh, he told all the women that they needed to get Brazilian waxes because the traffickers will know. All the traffickers have Brazilian waxes, and they needed to train in like tantric massages and things. And he's like, because otherwise, how are we going to appear as a kinky couple?
I'm like, first of all, Mormon married couples have no chemistry, so you don't need to worry about that, okay? Tons of married couples have no chemistry.
Also, it's not the kinky people who are out doing this per se. It's like kink are people who again have integrated that shadow side rather than being like, oh, it couldn't be me. That's all just evil, evil, evil. I have nothing against going to strip clubs. I have nothing against doing booze. I have nothing against mind-altering substances. I have nothing against sex work. Like, it's crazy that people think selling your body to the military for the art of killing, both to be killed and to kill, that's moral and good and awesome. But selling your body for the purpose of human connection is degrading and evil. I'm like, what the fuck? That's like a messed up moral hypocrisy that I don't believe in. Now, that being said, the way you go about doing any of that is what tells you is where the moral question really lies. And what Tim Ballard is doing is, again, relegating all that as evil. Like sex is bad, adultery is bad, sex work is inherently bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage, my shadow side, which has been totally squashed down, is going to, Satan and God are going to link up in the realm of my unconscious and figure out a scheme to play out those desires while providing my highest justification of saving the children and doing this.
That is kind of like not to say that other people don't talk about that, but that is like the piece of this whole story that I wish there was more mainstream understanding about. That it's like, we do have like pretty reasonable explanations for why someone like Tim Ballard would do, we don't need to fall into the like good or evil, there is like a logical explanation for why a human being's psyche do you know what I mean? Like it's there. Anyway, I don't know. Sorry I didn't say this at the beginning of the stream, but you can super chat us, and if you don't want to give money to YouTube, you can Venmo us. I just put our support the channel links in the description box. Sorry I didn't do that at the beginning. But yeah, if you want to super chat us by Venmo, you can.
Somebody said Joseph Smith invented the couples ruse. Totally.
So
and
true.
Tim Ballard is it's also understated that Mormonism is a new age Christian religion, and that so much of the folk magic that was present at the initial stages of Mormonism have now like found their way into the outskirts and I guess maybe the heart of Mormonism, which is Utah. And stuff like multiple mortal probations and reincarnation and past lives with past wives, it has been justifications for these types of people literally since Joseph Smith. He wrote the playbook for this, and here he is using it out. So in the official statement from the women highlighting the over 100 allegations that they're taking to court, said that Ballard used spiritual manipulation to force them into sexual contact. Almost all of the women involved are or were Mormon. That claimed that President M. Russell Ballard had given him permission to do the couples ruse as long as there was no sexual intercourse or kissing on the lips, and had given him a special priesthood blessing as such. I think that's probably likely true. M. Russell Ballard was so deep in all of this.
It would be like I bless that you'll be able to go into these places where the spirit isn't, and the spirit will still be with you. I could give that blessing.
Oh, totally.
I could seriously predict that.
You can see how this all is playing out, and why
it wasn't like Ballard was like, yes, you have to do tantric yoga, or they're going to spot it a mile off. Trust me on this one.
Yeah, it's just so funny that these like prophets, seers, and revelators can't even pick out the most obvious grifts time after time. Mark Hoffman. You know who knew Mark Hoffman was a grifter and a murderer? Fucking the anti-Mormons, Gerald Tanner called it, was the one who was like, this doesn't line up with Mormon history. Gerald Tanner knew the history well enough to know that it was fake. The Mormon apostles didn't. Okay. So they said OUR management adopted and accepted the couples ruse as a standard policy and procedure of the company, and allowed Ballard unrestrained allowance on how he enacted the couples ruse.
Are you in the lawsuit right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So again, Tim had pretty much free reign to do the company is just a group of yes men who are like, whatever, you're driving the gravy train. Anything you want to do, that's what we do. Anything to save the children. Is anything to save the children? Yes, anything.
Because I bet all the higher ups are making a pretty decent salary and feeling important.
Yes, not to mention their for-profit adoption scheme. So if we're going to foreign countries to create demand for trafficking that didn't exist prior, that we can funnel into our for-profit adoption scheme. What's the word for that? Human trafficking. So he's got, again, unfettered power to do whatever he wants in this couples ruse, and this seems to be taking on an ever more present part of the scheme. He couldn't just be a single guy who said no thanks to a lap dance. And also interesting that nobody else on the team needed to have the couples ruse. It was only him. And his whole thing is like, the only way to not commit adultery is to commit adultery. It's just one of these weird ways. Because if I was going to have adultery with, a sex worker, that would be bad. But if I did it with someone who was playing my wife who also happened to be a premortal wife. Well, that's all good in God's eyes.
The fact that we got a Lori Vallow Chad Daybell thread in this story.
Oh, I know.
Through the fucking
Nephi again.
Come on. I mean,
oh my God.
There's grifting, and then there's like, this is an insane person grifting. No. And your community does not have the checks and balances in it or understanding of, I don't know, like what's healthy or normal or whatever, or reasonable to be able to identify this man as he is growing more. Like, Mormonism built this man.
Oh, yes.
And then he was able to tap into the evangelical. Yeah.
Yes. A quick tangent into Mormon history and Nephi. There's a reason all these like people who end up killing their spouses, and it's crazy that Tim has told multiple women that he's like, well, if my wife ever disappears, if she ever mysteriously dies, I would marry you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Same kind of Chad Daybell stuff. They're both invoking the story of Nephi beheading Laban. Why? Because that story is saying like, override all normal governing rules of human compassion, decency, and love to, in the sense of a higher service that totally offends all reason and morality.
That he may not be conscious of the fact that his like ego has co-opted that.
Yes.
Like he may fully buy into that.
And I used to kind of think that was just like a weird story. And then it was literally like, as I'm on the tail end of my faith crisis, it's like crumbling down. I know way too much. I was like, what if I just read the Book of Mormon one more time? Maybe this is maybe the second dozenth time I've read the Book of Mormon. This will be the time when God, like at the last hour, comes in and proves to me that it's true.
Yeah.
So I open it up. I get to the story of Nephi finding Laban defenseless and drunk and the Spirit being like, you gotta kill him. And I was just like, this is not the God of love. Like, you don't prove your loyalty to the God of love. You don't prove how good of a person you are by your aptitude to do something horrific that has no justification. Like, there was no reason for that to happen. We know that you don't need plates to dictate a revelation. We know that like there's literally no reason for it. It's just for it was written by a manipulator and has been used to justify manipulation by people following in his footsteps. Like, that's all there is to it.
But there also seems to be like an even larger phenomenon of like this. It's something that we as humans, when we have a certain like set of dysfunctions, that's like what we fall into. Like the grifter, it's just like how every cult leader is so similar. You're like, they're not reading from the same, they're just picking up on the same sort of like rules of human psychology.
Yes, totally.
And which is just mind blowing to me.
Yeah. And religions aren't the only, religious people or Christians aren't the only people who are susceptible to this.
Yeah.
We all are, because it's just playing off of inherent human predispositions and psychic bias. It's like,
which is why I think a lot of us are obsessed with cults, is because they're about so much more than cults, because they're always representative of like the cultures out of which they came, and like normal people do join cults. So it's just revealing something that is unfortunately like a part of human psychology,
human needs
that we've yet to reckon with properly in like a mainstream understanding kind of way.
Or we are now.
Yeah, well, kind of, but people are now leaving Mormonism over
this.
Yeah,
and Tim Ballard's Instagram is like growing constantly. It's very scary to watch.
Scary. Let's do super chat.
Sophie says Venmo isn't a thing here in the UK, sadly. Love you guys and what you do. Better love anything the doctor can prescribe.
Aww.
Better than anything the doctor. Thank you so much. Love you,
and love having people from the UK watching. Christine, the best therapy I've ever had as an ex-SDA. Seventh-day Adventists.
Oh, wow.
Oh, thank you. Love from UK. UK in the chat.
One of our dear friend is a Seventh-day Adventist, and it's fun to compare notes since they're kind of cousins in the faith. Annabelle Thomas, or Tom's, I can't see, that's abbreviated. Annabelle says, Tim Ballard is so similar to Joseph Smith, and I never would have seen it if I weren't reading No Man Knows My History by Fawn Brody. Yes. And going through deconstruction. Only a narcissist could do what they've done. Yeah, totally.
You need like the little, and you don't really get the little details of Joseph Smith. So even like No Man Knows My History, even after being out of Mormonism for a while, I was like, whoa. Like I wasn't quite grasping the day-to-day of all of this. And I feel like all these details that are coming out, it's not just these like vague accusations of like sexual assault. It's a lot of very specific details that is painting a very clear picture. And I'm like, this is so, it's so clearly real. But
Someone mentioned, Milo says that Tim was drunk half the time, and there are statements about how he missed like a $250,000 speaking appointment because he was just drunk off his ass.
Fucking
and it's funny that like in the couple's ruse,
a $250,000 speaking assignment.
When you're making millions and all you got to do is say, save the children, send me $1 million. Anyone who criticizes me is a pedophile and a bitch.
I'm not being funny, but like
you can do whatever you want.
I'm not the most like work devoted person in the world, but to have that level of disrespect for your work to where like that is an unhinged like level of self-absorption to get either drunk before, and just like the levels of grandiosity you'd have to have a $250,000 speak and not think that you should maybe stay sober the night before, or, you know.
Girl boss, let me tell you, I have nothing wrong with starting a small business with your friend where you do mind-altering substances for money and entertainment.
Even when it compromises the quality of your work.
But
couldn't be me today.
Again, doing it under the ruse of saving children that you are not actually saving. Yeah. And while having so much of the money going to self-aggrandizing and self-serving ends is so unconscionable. And again, not just self-serving. It's one thing to be selfish and to fly. You know, you might be like, you don't need to stay in the nicest hotel, but maybe if the traffickers if they can smell how rich you are, if they see you going to just like a local Airbnb or your Motel 6, they'll know that you don't really have the money to buy it.
That's the best explanation I've heard for that.
Well,
but you certainly don't need to. Yeah, it's all.
Turns out he also was not just going to hotels. He also had a special safe house that was private where he would take just the women he was grooming with at the time, and they'd have a private chef and a nice overlooking of the beach or whatever, like classic Epstein kind of move.
It's like he literally could have just been polyamorous or got divorced, or there's just any number of just normal ways he could have allowed these. He's just trying to like fucking date, like have girlfriends.
Literally.
But I'm like, to what level is he? He's probably just so.
And that's all these people. That was Joseph Smith. That was all these.
I think there's a level of like power hungry. They must be like a distinct lack of empathy and an obsession with power to even make you inclined to want to do all that stuff.
And they've been given like all the self-aggrandizement they need from Mormonism. That's like, you are the priesthood holder. You have more authority and regard than any pope or leader or president on earth. Like, you are God's spokesperson. And when you have God's literal spokesperson saying like, I bless you that you are doing a great work and you will bring many to the church. And
it's like Donald Trump becoming president, where you're just like, it's actually scary that someone it is scary that someone as powerful as Elder Ballard, as much as we roast the apostles, and it's still scary that someone that powerful could have taken this kind of classic grifter under his wing and fully bought in. That is terrifying.
Terrifying, and yet so typical.
Yeah.
So typical.
It's just Donald Trump, and that's why all the Donald Trump people are supporting him.
Exactly.
Because again, to unpack one is to unpack both. But these are the people that are the most like, I will not be censored, and like my truth. And it's like, dude, literally. You can't see the most basic truth that is happening here. You have to literally invent grifts that your enemies are doing because you're not smart enough to reckon with your own, or just truly don't care enough,
Right.
But it's like,
So we haven't even finished the list of allegations, let alone the stories. Ballard would claim that a passage from the Book of Mormon, we talked about that, using the Nephi story to justify people doing unconventional tasks. Ballard would claim to the women that defendant Janet Russin told him that he had been married to them in a previous life, and so their conduct was appropriate.
Was Janet part of like OUR from the beginning? Like, was she an integral part of how it? Like, were they around the campfire together coming up with the idea for OUR?
Yeah, as far as I can understand, he left Homeland Security a brief stint that he has like over-exaggerated and over-heroified, and many people who have been interviewed by like Lynn Packer have been like, no, that dude is an ego run amok. Like, he was not a special undercover agent. Like, he's totally blowing smoke up his own ass.
This is like when everyone from Taylor Swift's high school was like, she doesn't even have a southern accent. She's from Pennsylvania, and she was just normal, and she didn't have any boyfriends. Why do I always relate Tim Ballard to Taylor Swift? My brain is rotting.
The 2 points of references. There's the patriarchy and the matriarchy.
Not good.
Yeah, but it seems like, so he left that and was like, with the intention of, I want to make a documentary where I'm the star who's been rescuing kids, and then worked with video companies to set up these stints, and then got reference to Gardy. He had met the psychic, and oh my God, the two of them together, what they must be cooking together, just watching two narcissists, like
two
the
business bimbos.
Yeah, it's like, put all that into a Claymation mental health podcast or something.
Then you maybe could have been the world's first.
So again, he's wanted, and again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make art, to wanting to make movies, with wanting to even be famous, even though I think that's that's an unfortunate side, in my opinion, of any kind of content creation.
It's like,
fame seems like I'd much rather be rich than famous.
And it's like if he had the resources to make a movie where he was a star, just make a movie and make yourself but there was clearly a massive grandiosity to where he needed more than that. He needed to be king of the world, president of the United,
Yeah.
That's I know we're like not allowed to, I know we can't diagnose people on the internet, but I'm like, that level of grandiosity is surely indicative of like narcissism as a full on.
Well, I mean, it is it's like the Trump thing, that it's like, you don't have to be like a therapist to see it. Like, again, he's not taking any accountability. Like, everybody in his life, his own church, his own longtime business associates, everyone is like, Tim, you fucked up big time. And he's just like, no. There's just lies by the pedophiles, lies by pedophiles. I'm doing God's work. I'm God's chosen one.
For years, though, because it's, again, his people at every point, like, people were picking up on the fact that he was like this, but because of the Mormon patriarchal system, he was just allowed to bulldoze through it all, and it wasn't really going to hold him back. If there was like a hint of controversy around a woman, that would be it.
Oh yeah. And
although Jodie Hildebrand, to be fair, yeah.
And this is the thing, is like, there are so many people whose sense of identity is so stuck in concrete that, again, to like analyze Tim would be to just unshelve the whole business. And so they're just like, he may walk away from this more successful than ever. That's the scary thing. But at least, hopefully now, his political ambitions are somewhat squashed. But again, this is like, he's being set up to be the next senator for the United States, one of the most powerful people in the United States. I don't think it was a grandiose ketamine-induced vision alone that was making him believe he would be the president of the United States. I think he was being groomed by Utah politicians and the conservative political machine generally, including Glenn Beck, to be the next, not maybe the next, but like a president of the United States. I think that was inherent. And that is terrifying.
Yeah.
And all these guys knew about it. Sean Reyes, all these people who are participating in this god-awful scheme, they're just assholes. It's like, they're not even like, oh, I didn't see any of the bad stuff. It's like, no, you're just impervious from seeing the bad stuff. You don't want to see the bad stuff. You're benefiting. You are the bad stuff.
Yeah. You are truly not interested in seeing it. Like, what do you expect it to do? Like, just come and hit you in the face? Like, there probably were times where it did. It's actually crazy how similar this is to Donald Trump as a phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
Where he just became this puppet who people, even the people that supported him could be like, he's not very smart, but he'll be easy to sort of influence. So it seems like something like that was sort of going on here. They find these like really grandiose, but rather stupid puppets, but they have enough like grandiosity and wherewithal to like be able to do it. But then,
Yep. And most people aren't going to be able to, like, at least from what we can see in the world today, is just like a lot of average people are just going to be like,
Don't you think it's really scary how there's, I don't know, maybe like half of the population is able to look at like Donald Trump or Tim Ballard and kind of instantly realize like something's off with this person. Like, this is not a person I trust. And then there is like this other massive chunk that they see a person who presents like that, and it's not ringing any alarm bells because it's so familiar to them.
Yes. Because people like that have been people in power forever. Like, confidence artistry has always been the name of the game. Like, asserting power, coerciveness, like brute mentality. This is what we're clawing away from as a species, hopefully. But it has been the name of the game for thousands of years. And so it's like easy to see how people are just impervious to it, how they benefit from it, how it just gets propagated. But hopefully this kind of public discussion is bringing it to light and changing things.
Don't you think it also shows how clearly the problem is not good and evil, but it's like con versus reality, to be honest, and like to see the truth, like it's compassionate to see the truth of a situation. You know what I mean? Like that's you can't really have empathy without truth, or it's not like valuable feeling. And that's why these types of people always like co-opt people's empathy, because it's a resource they can mine to then like own those people's like psyches in a lot of ways, basically.
Totally. And it appeals to all of our desire to like affect change positively. We're faced with just the most horrific things you can imagine in the world, like a genuinely cruel world, and we feel so powerless to enact any kind of meaningful change. And when we see someone who's offering to do that for us, and we pay our $7 and we sit our asses down and we watch the movie and we feel really, really bad, but we knew that our $7 is going to fight that. Then when someone questions that, it's like, no, you're like, I'm a good person, I'm helping, it goes
so
against all that.
Scary to like think that people are exploiting people's empathy and robbing it, and then that empathy is just being wasted on an imaginary thing, and then they don't have it for the actual world. Right. Like literally robbing our species of empathy that we are naturally wired to have in the service of helping some narcissist gain power.
Yes. And of course, none of this energy or money is going toward facing the issue in Tim's own congregation in his own state, right? Because the practice runs that they're doing at the strip club, where he is dosing his own son with drugs, unknown drugs. Get this. I can't
believe this, actually. Did we just find this out today?
Yeah, I just found this out today. Sorry, normally we could cut this out, but as we're on a live, it takes a little longer to look everything up. Oh my God, it's all just so nuts. Oh yeah, so one of the allegations, number 77 on the list, Ballard included his son, who had just returned from serving a mission for the Mormon church, to the strip clubs without Ballard's wife's knowledge. God, to be a fly on the wall in their home discussions. Oh yeah, they said he was doing the exact opposite. He was consuming excessive amounts of alcohol, tequila.
Healthiest alcohol. He is a health queen.
He is a health queen.
Vegan protein powder, so.
Which he drank at strip clubs, massage parlors, on trips, to the point of passing out. For example, he missed
the mission, Tam.
$250,000 speaking engagement. He developed a sexual position where it appeared he was having full-on sexual intercourse with his couples ruse victims while not actually penetrating. That is just, he's like, if my dick isn't out and you're not grinding on me, they're going to know we're not married. And then this whole problem I've created for us will just fall apart. This is so nuts, because this is all this ruse has been like, oh, we had to do stuff, and then people have been like kind of cutting him slack, being like, yeah, you got to do stuff while you're undercover. But then once you actually read this stuff, you're like, no reasonable person is like, yeah, that needed to happen. It didn't need to happen for anybody else on the team. And he even told other team members, which, let me see if I can find the screenshot. He basically said, yeah, sometimes you got to touch the women and you have to touch the children. Otherwise, they'll know you're not a pedophile. So again, he's creating a demand where it didn't exist prior, and saying, as an undercover action, you need to commit the crime that you are setting out to fight where it was not existing prior. You've created a new demand for trafficking so that these people, and I'm not saying that everyone has gone there with the intention to just do bad shit, right? But it is very convenient for those who are looking for an opportunity. And I think there are a lot of...
You tend to get a mix at the top of these cults, don't you? Like, anyway, I think it feels, not that it would be any less horrific whoever you were, but it feels especially sad because these women that he's doing this shit with are so like sexually underdeveloped, or like so not knowledgeable about consent, because like the Mormon culture. So they are just the perfect people to be in this situation and just not know how to like react, not know how to distinguish what's healthy. And maybe it is part of the mission. I don't know anything about sex because I've only had sex with my husband my whole life. And, you can see how it was the perfect climate.
Totally. And you can what's amazing is even given that climate, even with all of that, these women were like, this ain't right. And again, seeing it firsthand, like we are now going through these item by item, and some of the stories we'll get into, it just becomes so evident. Here's the quote I was looking for. He said, Ballard explained that they were running into problems on operations when male operators did not engage in sex acts. Again, to catch a pedophile, you got to act like a pedophile. That's the only way, even though every other like bona fide anti-sex trafficking expert and person who has been successful at this is saying that's horseshit. You don't have to do that. He said that if male operators don't touch the women or children, the traffickers would figure out that it was a sting and would create danger for all.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God. We got to get into the story of this woman, WW. It's so harrowing.
Can I just say, we only briefly touched on the Brazilian wax thing, but Tim asked all of these women who were doing these couples ruses with him to get Brazilian waxes, because apparently 100% of sex tourists have Brazilian waxes. First of all,
because he's met them all and personally interrogated each of them, and of course had to do very in-depth searches just to make sure.
Yeah, like what would be the situation where you'd be found, where the woman would need to be naked in front of a trafficker? Because I feel like if you're at that point, something's gone wrong. Like you really shouldn't be planning for that. I think if you get to that point, you got bigger problems than the state of your pubic hair. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's like this ruse that was invented to get the traffickers off ends up becoming Tim's ruse to getting women more and more sexually involved with him. It's very harrowing.
Yeah, and so representative of Tim's general MO, which seems to be to just like invert the thing. You know, it's Donald Trump saying I'm the least racist person in the world, or it's that classic human thing of whatever is a part of you that is like repressed and dark and like scary. You just project it outward, but then you do the very thing. We don't need to.
Yeah. I did find that bit about his son. So this is one of the women talking about when she was placed into a throuple situation for the couple's ruse.
Wait, no.
Again, this ruse that is allegedly invented to keep other people off.
Just playing out all his fucking fantasies.
Literally.
So depraved.
While waiting to head out and start our training, at one point, Tim's son, again, who just came off a Mormon mission, Tim's son came over to talk with us. He made a comment about how his dad had given him something to take, presumably some type of pill, but I'm unsure of what. He then said he felt high and was kind of laughing about it like it was no big deal. So
that's insane.
Now let's read the story.
It's scary that this is a man who seems like he should go to prison for the levels of fraud and manipulation and like human rights abuses he's committed. But it's kind of like with the Keith Raniere thing, where a lot of the time with these cult leader types, you don't seem to be able to, it's always only something random you'll be able to get them on, like tax fraud or something. That's when the law kicks in and gives a shit.
Exactly.
But like manipulation of women and fraud and all this, it just seems like these people never get in trouble. But then people go to jail for like way less unethical things.
I think that's exactly how that's going to play out in this situation too.
But do you think they'll eventually be able to, do you think he'll go to prison?
Maybe maybe.
Donald Trump didn't go to prison.
The thing is it's not entirely divorced from the human aspect. Like the human aspect plays into the financial coercion. It was like, all this fundraising was done while all this bad shit was being done in the name of. And so even though we can't directly prosecute or implicate for on technicalities alone, we can on this, but that will all be included later, which I think is how it played it out with Keith Raniere and likely will with Tim, because once the investigation is reopened, he's fucked. Like that whole thing was a sham.
Him going to other countries for this, where he can't be held accountable, right? In the same ways.
Yeah, because they just bribed local police force. They literally just went down and bribed the local police forces in the poorest countries in the world so that they could just do all this shit without anyone caring. It's really fucked. Do you want to read the story from this woman? Okay. It's long, but it paints a picture.
What's this?
So this is them.
Is this from the lawsuit?
At the club. Yeah, this is her statement about what's going on at the club.
Most of the women do not have their shirts on. They have little to no underwear on. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. I wanted to cry, so I excused myself.
Again, like, there's nothing inherently wrong with like being at a club, but you can like feel the tension of like a presumably Mormon woman being put into this situation that's already going to be like really tough,
uncomfortable with this display of sexuality, has been trained to view it as connected to pedophilia, when it may not be. So that's going to make every like discomfort that she has about the sexual display that is completely unfamiliar to her exaggerated. And
she's seeing these guys like genuinely enjoy the experience. A son wandering in on drugs, being like, kind of funny though.
Like, what reason would the son need to be on a drug? That's just...
Let's read this. It's nuts.
I go to the bathroom. I'm in a stall. It's disgusting. I don't even dare to pee. I just lean my head over because I don't want to mess up my makeup. And I let the tears just fall to the ground because I don't want to mess up my makeup. She said that twice. I'm trying to keep it together, but this is so hard for me. I pull it together as much as I can. I don't have my phone. We aren't allowed to have our phones. So fucking isolated as well as this is all happening. And
they'll know you're a cop if you have a phone. No one else has a phone but cops.
And everyone in the group is like, believes that Tim is a prophet. I mean, like our friend who went on a OUR operation, like even he who kind of like did see through it a bit, still believed Tim was like this really good guy and like believed the hype, you know?
And he's got the tacit approval of the Mormon church, of the LDS apostle.
I washed my hands and I went out and I noticed that Tim has his arm around DM. Is that the name of another woman?
Yeah.
CL, is that another woman? Is sitting in a booth with Matt Cooper. And Tim walks over to me and asks if I'm okay. And I said, yep. And he was like, okay, come with me. And we start dancing. And then he takes me into this room and he whispers in my ear, are you okay? And I just nod and he says, okay. And we're in this little room by ourselves. There's a curtain and a woman opened it, and they opened it and asked us if we want someone to come dance for us. And he tells them now that I'm going to dance for him. So he tells me I need to give him a lap dance.
Isn't that convenient? Every time, like, oh, no.
You can't just like borrow a room for your wife to give you a lap dance.
But that's the whole ruse. You have to. That's what you signed up for. That's why we did all the tantric massages.
Like, this woman doesn't know that that's not normal at a strip club because she's never been, you know.
Right. It's not like you don't go to a strip club so that you can get a lap dance from your wife.
Yeah. Like, you're taking up their space. They need to have clients.
And it's like, oh no, I'm such a good, wholesome pedophile. I only have sex with my wife and with kids. No one else.
Oh, so I start giving him a lap dance.
It's so obvious. It's so dumb.
And next thing I know, his son opens the curtain and I'm staring him straight in the face and he is watching me give his dad a lap dance. I lost it. I came unglued. Blaine, his son, turns around, says sorry, and walks away. I told Tim I was done. Oh, God.
Isn't it?
Like a Mormon woman in that situation, that is heartbreaking. I freaked out. I told him we're all done. We're all leaving. This night is over. I told Tim he lied to me and told me that this would not happen. They all promised me. When I walked out of the room, Blaine was sitting at the bar. He's literally staring at this girl on a pole with her leg up to her head, and her vagina is sticking out of her thong, like in the middle of her vagina. So her vagina is completely hanging out, and he's like a deer in the headlights.
I'm sure he's just checking to see if she's got a Brazilian wax, to see if she's,
I grabbed him. I tell him he needs to leave. Then I went and grabbed Matt CL and DM. I said, we're done. I'm so upset. Blaine should not be here. Yeah, because this kid's 19, right? If he just got back from his mission, probably.
Yeah, 20, 21-ish.
Well, they go at 18 and it's...
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it a year and a half now for everyone?
Do even the men go at 18 now?
Yeah, the men go at 18, yeah.
Okay.
So they each,
wow. Yeah.
We are leaving at this point. I've never seen this older gentleman, but he is clearly a part of OUR and the team. He came up and apologized to me. I just said, whatever, we are all leaving. We are all outside. I'm even impressed that she's kind of gathered the strength to be like, we're all getting out of here.
On the spot, yeah.
To Tim Ballard and all these people.
While it's happening. Again, this isn't like, oh, I went home and then after talking with the liberal elite media, I decided that my excursion was actually really bad. It's like, while it's happening, she's like, red flag, red flag. You told me this wasn't going to happen and now you're doing it. And she's just like, the curtain has just fallen. Oh, I feel so bad for her. And again, this is why like even Glenn Beck was like, had to listen to this and be like, okay, I guess I do have to throw Tim under the bus now, because you can't read this and be like.
But do you know what's fucked up is like, if you read the Russell Brand women's stories, they're just as convincing as this. But because Glenn's not personally affected by that, he's just immediately, and in the same article in which he's denouncing Tim, decided that those allegations are false. I guarantee he hasn't read them in this detail, and they exist in this detail.
Yes.
Okay, so I just said whatever. We're all leaving. We're all outside. Tim went over and talked to Blaine for a minute. Also, I feel so bad for his son because you know his dad was not like, it sounds like he'd probably be a pretty authoritarian father if he's this personality type, you know. So I'm sure his son is under his control as well.
Or at least is sort of, you know, being groomed into the situation like, where this is all like, this is how we roll.
Yeah.
Literally on Molly. You just took Molly.
Yeah. Yes.
It's pretty freaky. It's really freaky.
Mine and Tim's Uber came. We all got back into our cars and met back at the gym in Draper. I honestly, so this was at Salt Lake Strip Club.
Oh yeah, he has them going to the gym to do like gym auditions to make sure they're fit enough to fight the traffickers. It's all
I can't believe they just rolled up to a Salt Lake Strip Club. And also I'm like, I've like met girls who work at that strip club. Well, actually,
we had the most wholesome strip club experience.
But I'm like, trails in Salt Lake seems fun. Like, that's certainly not trafficking children, and you're not going to find traffic. I mean, I guess I don't know because I'm not in the strip club scene, but it seems highly unlikely that there's any. I guess because the whole ruse though is to get them used to a strip club environment, right?
Get them.
Why would they need to take a pill to do that?
You've got to try you have to do the tantric sex in the strip club before going out on the mission. Otherwise, if you're doing it for the first time on opening night, it's the traffickers are gonna know. They have the most finely attuned sense in the entire world. They can smell a ruse a mile away. The pheromones of the bikini wax alone.
So I honestly do not remember my conversation with Tim on the way back. I just remember walking into the gym. Everyone was looking at me with faces like, oh shit. And I walked right up to Blaine and I asked him if his mum knew where he was that night. And he says, she knows I'm here with my dad. And I said, so what does she think you're doing? And he said, well, she thinks that I'm just helping with training. Does she know? It's kind of funny because the pill thing and the fact that he's there is very disturbing, but it's like, it's not inherently a problem that a 19-year-old boy is at a strip club if he wants to be there. But what's like triggering this woman?
Do you have to be over 21 to be in a strip club due to alcohol consumption in Utah?
So maybe he's 21. Yeah, he probably is then.
Or he is an underage person in a bar, which actually would be really disturbing.
That's true.
He shouldn't like.
But I guess we don't know. It could be either way. But regardless, it's interesting that the point that's triggering her that something is wrong is that this teenager, this 19-year-old. I mean, he's certainly above 18, you know. And
she knows he's on drugs that her dad gave him.
Yeah, so that part is disturbing, but
she's just like.
But don't you think it's just kind of interesting that that's what's like ringing an alarm bell? Is like, this is a kid. He's not quite a kid. He is like technically a young man. But
after being like volunteered to give Tim Ballard a lap dance, that she knows he's like getting off on some level.
I'm like that.
And then and then the son walks in like, and she's like, he shouldn't be here. He shouldn't be here. This should not be happening. Yeah. Like it's all happening at once.
So also, again, good for her for standing up in this situation.
Yeah, like so brave.
And I said, would she be okay with you going to strip clubs? And he said, no. Like, I assume he is like old enough to where it doesn't really matter what his mum thinks of him going to strip clubs though. Because he's bare minimum, he's got to be 20. I don't know.
And she knows that Tim Ballard is going to strip clubs. And she's like, yep, my mommy's little soldiers off to fight the traffickers at the strip club. I wonder if we'll get a statement from Tim's ketamine supplier. I did not condone the visitation of the prophet Nephi.
Earlier that night, when he was at my house helping with the phones, he had told me that he had a girlfriend and that she had waited for him while he was on his mission. And I said, how do you think your girlfriend would feel with you being here? And he said, not okay. And I said, then there's your answer. You should not have been here tonight. He said, it's okay. It's okay. I've known about this and I've been training for this my whole life. Dark if true.
Dark if true.
And I said, you really should think about getting a different job. If you want to do this, do a different part of it. So we all huddle up. I'm standing in the corner because I'm so pissed off and everyone still is just kind of apologizing like we're so sorry. It's really awkward. I don't really remember the rest of the night. I got a message from Tim the next morning at 6:52 that said, you were fantastic. I really do want to keep working with you. We will work out the emotions and tactics, and so many things will revolve around ops. Let's talk very soon. We ended up talking on the phone a lot that day, and from then on, we talked a lot about spiritual things.
Oh, you always got to get back to the spiritual justifications.
Convenient. A built-in way that he can get back in with her and prove to her that he's a good guy, because in those communities, if someone talks the talk about spiritual things, then they're a good guy. So it immediately throws your common sense into question a bit.
Yeah. And it's so easy to see how he could frame all of this as like, this is what we have to do. This is how, like, why it's justified. None of us want to be doing this, but this is how we bust the people. But it's like, again, no reasonable person in this situation is like, yeah, that had to go down that way.
Yeah.
It's just like,
absolutely not.
Not at all. Do you want to read another story?
Yeah, no, but yeah. Both women...
We're just jumping into a scene.
Both women, Russian and Ukrainian, join us in the bedroom. Tim has been heavily drinking, asks me to do new boundary break.
Sorry, remember, another part of this ruse is he's telling the women, if you're ever asked to drink alcohol, swish it in your mouth, hold on to it, and then we're not looking, kiss me, do the alcohol into my mouth.
He sounds like a child.
And then I'll spit it out when no one's looking.
It's like when you're a kid and
you don't want to eat your vegetables.
You think that you'd be able to fend off a murderer with this like random and it's like, that's the least of your... It's just so
and if they tried that and managed to not make it look absolutely comical...
Yeah.
Then of course he was just getting drunk because he was just drinking.
Attention to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's like there are sober pedophiles. You don't have to get like wasted to be a pedophile. Plenty of sober people abuse kids. Ugh. So both women join us in the bedroom. Tim has been heavily drinking, asks me to do new boundary break of removing my top, asks me to take charge of the time in there because I'm the boss.
Again, he gives them these like parameters of things that could happen. And then in the heat of the moment goes way beyond that into breaking new barriers while they're vulnerable and all the pressures on them to make the mission go right. Otherwise, we're all in jeopardy. Now you have to take off your top. It's the only way.
Mm-hmm. Which is classic cult leader. Like, the things that Keith Raniere would make women do, they too were like, this feels kind of fucked up. But the whole name of the game is you slowly learn to override your intuition and your boundaries.
How far will you go to save the children? Literal text from Tim Ballard.
Oh, he asks me to push his head down into me so they believe we're going to have oral sex. This is all so unnecessary. It's got nothing to do. Even with the fucking character you're trying to play, it's completely irrelevant. He gets completely naked and he's sleeping drunk on the floor until he climbs into bed. Prior to this evening, we had insisted on separate beds. This night and the night before was a horribly disgusting situation, as I primarily had to fend for Tim and even take the touching and sucking from the other women. I left incredibly vomitous and still want to throw up thinking about it. God, grim. So this is another story. This is just a collection of the women's stories in the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Meet in SL at CD Motel 6 since our flight to JFK, where he planned to surprise me. He totally lied about things with tantric massage before flying to Tampa. Wanted to discuss this new technique we could try. Oh God, this is fucking...
The new technique. I've been mulling it over a long time and really think this new technique is really going to get us somewhere. The pedophiles will never see it coming. Never.
The fact that his supporters will be like, well, what are you doing to fight human trafficking? I'm like, this is what Tim was doing to fight human trafficking. Like, this was it with a bunch of like bows on it. Wanted to discuss, and yeah, the fucking, what's the word where you like extort? No. What's the word where you...
Launder?
No, where you like kind of force someone into a situation where they like betray their own morals for a ton of money.
Entrapment.
Yeah, like the entrapment is like a whole other piece of it.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, this new technique we could try where he places his dick underneath me and it totally looks like we're having sex, but we're not.
Oh my God.
So they're all completely fooled. Why would they need to believe you're having sex?
Amy said Nephi told me about dry humping, and this is literally the prophet Nephi coming to endorse soaking. I guarantee it.
This is Warren Jeffs.
This is the most Mormon story ever.
Yeah. Tim becomes desperate to get us into a sexy massage, offering cash up to $500 for the lady to find us a room so we can experience new room massage. He tries to get me to get the massage therapist to take off her clothes. I refuse. That seemed criminal to me to ask, right here in Salt Lake City, to an innocent person. When I talked with him about it after, he was quite upset about being called out. Said she wasn't innocent. She was willing to give a hand job. Yep. And there we go. Once again, that is why men from puritanical, misogynistic purity culture should not be doing this work. Like, he is dehumanizing a sex worker as he's claiming to be fighting human trafficking.
So that he can get off coercing people who don't want to be there to entrap people who were just going to do him a solid for money, like in just like an exchange. Maybe. Like,
it's fine to...
It seems like she didn't go there at all, so he's making assumptions about her, but God.
It's fine to, like, exploit a whore in his mind. Someone who's, like, choosing to be a sex worker is just inherently a whore and therefore, like, is inherently dehumanized in his mind. That's fine because you're saving the perfect victim, which is someone that's being forced to do, you know, sexually sinful things.
Who is not who you're saving, because what you're doing is just going and finding new people
and entrapping. Exactly. Oh,
it's
my
all
God.
so bad.
It's crazy that, like, even after our first videos on this, we were so blown away with how shit it was, and it's so much worse than we thought.
And the people who are close to this, including people I can't even mention, who I've talked to who are close to this, all of them say, everyone who's been close to this is like, and this isn't even the tip of the iceberg.
He tries to, when I talked with him about it after, he's upset about being called out, said she wasn't innocent. She was willing to give a hand job. Like, she was willing to consensually give a hand job as part of sex, you know what I mean?
And you were willing to take it so that you could.
But she's bad and he's good.
Exactly.
He's got his other.
Because
God wanted him to.
Yeah.
God wanted him to. So it's fine.
It's all so
He spoke disparagingly about me when Coop picked us up, saying I had gone soft. Ignored me most of the remainder of the trip, left me behind at the house rather than taking me to visit Tony Robbins. Classic cult, you fall out of favor with the cult leader. You're always trying to gain favor. And took Alina alone to the clubs in the evening. Thank heavens I was spared from this. Whew. Oh, it's saying ads will run shortly for some viewers. Oh, God.
They can do that.
I just noticed today when we set up the live stream that YouTube like makes you pick now whether YouTube does the, like, basically you just have to have ads.
How does that work during a live stream? Whoa, we just went to commercial?
I guess we're in commercial. So does that in the, but it's just for some viewers. So if they have premium or.
If we die during the commercial break, do we die in real life?
That's such a good question. I think it's over now though.
UTBOH is Under the Banner of Heaven, which is about the Lafferty murders, I believe. Isn't it about the Laffertys, or is it a different murdering Mormon family that also invoked the prophet Nephi and the blood atonement rituals taught by the founding prophets of Mormonism?
That was completely different.
There's a lot of them. Utah history is full of it. And that's why people like Tim are so scary. The fact that he also mentioned to multiple people, multiple of these women reported that he said things like, you know, if my wife ever dies.
Which is like, as we've talked about, classic Chad Daybell stuff.
Yeah.
But also it's like, maybe he never would have done that, but just the fact that his brain is looking at it that way, like, shows kind of the like potentiality of that archetype of person. Like, maybe maybe it wouldn't have come to that, but we also do know that as these types of people gain power, they do things that they never would have done in the beginning when they were just a little farm boy. Do you know what I mean? Like, as with, power does corrupt.
Especially when the power is sought in the service of covering up.
It's weird how these cult leader types, like, their brains seem to genuinely come to believe in their own grandiosity. I guess they kind of believed in it all along. They just needed the right scheme to prove to people that they were so special.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's been validated, that those people become truly terrifying because they actually have power. And they're not even ethical enough to try and, like, appear ethical, as in the case of Donald Trump. You know, there's just so many ways they're willing to just show it because they're not even really conscious enough of it to know what not to show because they don't give a shit about ethics.
Other people who are in the same boat are like, meh.
Do not give a shit.
And if we can just keep lying and being bullies and getting our way, all the better for us.
Do we have more to read?
I mean, there's, like I said, it feels like every minute is a new and horrifying update. All of it is totally unsurprising and yet still shocking because it's like, oh yeah, he's just doing the same thing that has been done in other times in Mormon history since the beginning. Like, this is what Joseph Smith did. And he too sought political office and ran for president and was trying to get in political authority in order to squelch rumors and like it's all the same shit. And horrifying to watch. I'm sure there will be much more coming down the pipeline. The women who are speaking up about this are very brave because they're also reporting that Tim is threatening them. He's talked about like people have got like threatening phone calls after altercations with Tim. Like, he's a scary guy. Yeah. And the fact that they're willing to even take this action, I hate that people have downplayed the fact that they haven't until now pursued legal action, because it's like, who's got time for a court case? Who's got money for a court case? Who's got the emotional bandwidth? Yeah.
Like, because you already know that there's a higher chance he's going to, like, I don't know, because before now, like, there's there's like strength in numbers, you know, and now it's like it's more likely that they can win this case kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But they had no reason to think that before. The LDS Church hadn't even condemned them yet. Like, that happened recently, even though they probably could have done that way before. Mm-hmm. So it's scary.
Honestly, and we were like all so stoked on the church's statement to Vice and others. But like, now, in light of the stuff that's come out since and that will surely yet come out, it makes what they've done seem very light-handed.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it's just to like,
we never had any problem with this. Him though. I thought that was like, they don't normally do that.
They replaced his stake presidency to excommunicate him. His stake presidency was released like the week before his hearing.
Because they were all bought in on him?
Yeah, his stake president was like on the OUR board or some shit. Like, it's all very incestuous. Like, they're all very connected. And as they always are.
This power is the structure, just co-opt it. Boom.
Mormonism is the perfect affinity fraud network, which is why so many affinity frauds thrive here. Yeah. It was set up for fraud, by frauds, for frauds. And there are a lot of really, really good people who just haven't had the information and who have been programmed to not be able to see it and to demonize those who would point it out to them. But here we are.
It's kind of late in the stream to be mentioning this, but we do take super chats via Venmo if you don't want to give to YouTube. And we just got one from Janelle that said, money for having to cover this so much and reading all these stories. I hope you all are doing some deep decompression after. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Because I was going to say about the women coming forward, like, just us making videos about this, where like Tim himself obviously hasn't interacted. We're pretty like small fry, but just reading the comments from his supporters has been a distressing experience. You know, it's really scary to feel like all these people think that you're a groomer, a pedophile, like, you know, and just the anger and like you can feel the like seething anger and hatred in their comments. Mm-hmm. That is like an unsettling experience. Mm-hmm.
Especially living in the heart of Mormon country.
Yeah. And again, we're a small deal. Yeah. I cannot imagine what those women are like, that there is no amount of like money or fame that any woman is, you know.
They obviously don't want the fame. They don't want the publicity.
It's so funny how men under patriarchy find it so easy to believe that a woman would just be doing something that wouldn't be fun at all for money and fame. But when talking about a man that wants to go do drugs and drink alcohol and have sex with strippers at strip clubs.
We were totally duped. We never saw this coming.
God, yeah. It's always, just always the same stuff, just through different storylines. Like, that's why this channel keeps going. It's all the same thing.
And we want to be talking about our Claymation Mental Health podcast.
Claymation podcast.
We want to be having fun times, but we keep. It's because it's like, how else are we going to learn from this unless we're all talking about it? And it's good that, again, so many people are starting to talk about this. We just like have to reckon with this as people. Otherwise, this type of shit is going to keep going on. And these people are going to keep getting empowered. Again, the fact that Tim Ballard was being groomed for the U.S. Senate and potentially president of the United States.
Donald Trump was president. It wouldn't be setting any kind of new precedent.
No,
it would be following now. A path that has been worn.
Scary, scary, scary. Well, is that enough on the Tim Ballard?
I think so, yeah.
We'll keep you posted as things keep coming up. This is an endlessly fascinating and interesting story.
I wish we didn't have to keep going.
I wish we didn't. I will, just because it's a matter of personal inquiry. I have a lot of personal connection, people who are involved in it. It's been like in a lot of ways, I feel like some of us feel that it's sort of like a proxy conversation for Mormonism, because again, it is that like perfect microcosm, that perfect encapsulation of how spiritual, political, monetary, fraud all intersect to produce these types of phenomena. And so like this becomes a way of us being like, whoa, see this playing out in real time due to the cultural conditions that laid the groundwork for it. And it is, I think, maybe easier to engage on this level than it is to go directly toward, hey, the roots of your faith are totally flawed. Yeah. Even though that is what we have to do.
It's all the same,
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. Harrowing topic, but glad we could all be here together to process it.
Yeah, thank you for your continued support. Honestly, it means so much to us and keeps this channel going. And we've got a bunch of fun projects coming down the pipeline, the least of which is the first ever
Claymation podcast.
Can't stress it enough.
Can't stress enough how mental health focused this podcast is.
Yeah.
Just jam-packed. Huberman is going to be quaking in his little boots.
Thing of the past.
Yeah.
Then also we've just produced, with help of our friend Trevor, a Eagle Scout sketch that was really fun to film, and it's going to be
which we had to get drunk for.
Yes, in our that's what I'm saying. You got
to just do skits, man.
You can drink.
You can
do
play
drugs.
Out whatever you want through skits.
You can give psychic readings to your pals. You don't have to turn it into a whole grift. I'm telling you, you can have it all.
For something that.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
It's really sad. Okay.
Yeah, love you guys. Join
See
us
you next
on Patreon.
time.
We're reading 80s Mormon fiction as we always are, and it's really fun.
Bye.
We love you. Bye.